Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for UPSC preparation, KPSC preparation and other civil services examination in and around the country. What we will try and understand are a couple of important topics from GS paper 1, 2 and 3 perspective. Let us try and understand all these topics in greater detail. Let's look into the first article. The first article says the 70s show. What is this article all about? This article is here speaking about the economic restrictions imposed by the Government of India. We have the Ministry of Commerce, Directorate General of Foreign Trade, which has come up with the restrictions that are imposed for the import of laptops, tablets, all-in-one personal computers, ultra small form factor computers, so on and so forth. Why has this decision been taken? What could be the likely impact? What are the concerns that are associated with it, and what is the way forward is what we have to understand with respect to this article. First, let's look into the context. We have the Director General of Foreign Trade, which has imposed restriction on the import of laptops, tablets, all-in-one personal computers, ultra small form factor computers and servers falling under HSN 8741, and these will be restricted and their import would be allowed against a valid license for restricted imports. What do we understand by this? When we look into the data, what we have been making is a lot of imports from countries like China. This means that we are not able to innovate in our country, and at the same time the domestic manufacturing sector with respect to these sectors have also been behind the woods as well. In order to make sure that we have the domestic production increase, in order to make sure that we attract foreign companies, establish the factories in India, and in order to make sure that the imports is actually reduced over a period of time, and also from the security imperative perspective, this decision has been taken. So primarily we have this particular restriction that has been imposed by the Government of India. One, to make sure that the domestic sector is also given a boost. We will try and understand a greater picture with respect to this article. When we speak about this article, what is that we have to focus on? Which are the restrictions that are imposed by the Government of India? One is the personal computer, second is other computers, microcomputers, large or mainframe computers, other automatic data processing machines, other represented in the form, and processing units like the servers, so on and so forth. So this was, when you consider the existing policy, there was no restriction that was imposed, which basically means that we would be able to import these components from any of the country without ensuring that there is restriction. But however, going forward, if these will have to be implemented from, let's say, countries like China or from any other countries, this will be restricted. So basically what this will require is license from the government. So when I say restricted, does it mean we would not be able to import from any of these countries? No, you would be able to import, and this can be only imported with the permission of the government. So the government will basically provide the licenses. Licenses will be provided to the organizations as well. License would be provided to all those companies which seek for getting the imports from other country. So after getting due permission and licenses from the government, all these companies and other stakeholders would be able to import. So what is that they would not be able to import? What are the restrictions that is imposed on? So import with respect to the laptops, personal computers, so on and so forth are the restrictions. However, there are some exemptions that are given. What are these exemptions? Exemptions basically go on to declare that you would be able to import so and so, that is the laptops, computers, so on and so forth, without the permission from the government, which means to say you need not have to take the license from the government. Which are these exemptions? Let's say, for example, if it is import of one laptop, tablet, all-in-one personal computer, or ultra small form factor computer. These, if you are buying for your own use, my own use, or any individual's use, or we are bringing it as part of the baggage, in that particular case we don't have to get the license from the government. So let's say I've traveled to United States of America, or let's say I've traveled to China or any other country. Now I've gone there as a tourist. While I go there, I can also bring these tablets, laptops, so on and so forth. So as part of the baggage routes, I would be able to get it. So imposition or restriction is not present in this particular parameter. or if it is part of the capital goods. Let's say for example you're trying to build another platform, or you're planning to build subsequent product with this particular laptops, then in that case if it is essential part of the capital goods, license may not be required. Then when it comes to research and development, testing, benchmarking, evaluation, repair, re-export and product developmental processes, what do we understand by this? Let's say for example there is a laptop, or you want to bring a computer for the research and development. You want to innovate something in India. You want to ensure that you are also making sure that you are developing a new product for which you require some inputs, or you want to make an analysis out of it and ultimately draw a conclusion and build a new product out of it. In this particular case, once again, what we require is a laptop. So we have to make an in-depth analysis or read about this particular laptop, for which what you have to do is require a complete detailed research and development, for which you would be able to import these laptops and there is no restriction laid. However, there are restrictions within it. What is it? After the work is done, this has to be destroyed, and at the same time this should not be used for any other purposes as well. So the purpose that you are getting these laptops is for the research and development, but cannot be used for the personal issues. And at the same time, once all the work is done, this has to be destroyed as well. And at the same time, there will be restricted imports shall not be required for repair and return of re-import of goods repaired abroad, which means to say, in case you are bringing any of these laptops for, let's say, re-exporting the same, so there is an issue and you have to work on that particular issue, there are some errors, there are rectifications that needs to be done, and you're re-exporting that particular product back to the home country. Even in that case, restrictions are not imposed. So what we actually see is that these restrictions are not present and an exemption are given to these parts or the laptops that we get from another country. Why have the restrictions been imposed? That is because when you look into the data, what we have been witnessing from the past few years is that there is large scale imports from China. Of the 7 categories restricted for imports by India, the majority share of imports is from China. During April-May, the latest period for which country-wise data is available, India's imports from China for 7 categories of restricted imports were valued at 743.56 million, down by 5.6% from 787.84 million. The highest share of imports is the category of personal computers, including laptops and palm tops, under which imports from China stood at 558.36 million in April-May 2023 as against 618.26 million in the year go ahead. China accounts for roughly 70 to 80% of the share of China's imports of personal computers as well as laptops. In order to make sure that we do not make these massive imports from China, these have been taken up as part of the initiative. So on one side, preventing the imports from China, and at the same time giving boost to the domestic sector. As of now, India needs to invent. When you consider the economic sectors, we have the primary sector, which is the agricultural sector. We have the manufacturing sector, which happens to be the second sector. And third, what we have is the service sector. Most of the India's resources, and when it comes to India's GDP, is derived from the service sector, which is more than 50%. Then you also have agriculture, which also contributes to India's GDP as well as economy. But when you look at the transition that takes place within the economy, generally when a country has to prosper, there are 3 phases of it. One, what you have is the agricultural sector, which a country goes through. Then what it will build is the manufacturing sector. Third, what we will have is the service sector. But India has moved all the way from agricultural sector to the service sector. Its manufacturing sector is pretty weak. In order to strengthen this manufacturing sector, this is another initiative taken by the government of India. So basically, when we look into this particular article, it goes on to say that there are 3 main objectives as to why the government has come up with such a restriction or an imposition. One is with respect to preventing these imports from China, so that we have the balance when it comes to economic relationship, so that China does not dictate terms on the economic front. Second is with respect to molding the domestic sector. The third is with respect to what we call as the importance of making sure that the security is also taken into picture. With all these imports that we are making from China, what we actually witness is security surveillance. There have been apprehensions in United States of America and also in Australia as well, that certain parts that are imported from China are constantly engaged in surveillance. For example, it may be said that Huawei, which happens to be one of the companies, are not being allowed to test in United States of America or in Australia, primarily because they sense a security breach, which is another reason why restrictions have been imposed. So how will it affect India? What are the issues that are with respect to India? How will India be responsible for this particular issue going forward? Some of the concerns that has to be taken into consideration is with respect to the license Raj. When you go back to the year 1970s, so this article draws a reference from 2023 to the year 2000 to the year 1970. What happened in 1970? India was known for license permit Raj, which means to say there was a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, so on and so forth. So even if I have to perform some basic parameters, what I required was a lot of licenses that I had to get from the government. So even in the present situation, if I am making sure that even the basic laptops have to be imported, I have to generate a lot of licenses. I may have to pay bribes as well. The red tape may not be efficient as well. The bureaucracy may not allow it as well. So licensing Raj or the permit Raj is again back here during 2023. So this could ultimately bring down the businesses. So is it that the businesses will also have to go down to the government and seek their permission for all the organizational structural changes, which means to say that I'm hiring new set of people. So if I'm hiring new set of people, I may require new computers. So do I have to make these recommendations to the government and ultimately get these laptops, so on and so forth? These are some of the concerns that have been there. But there is also a limelight to it. There is also a greater picture to it. What does it indicate? When it comes to these laptops or any of these computers, India is largest importer. So what does India do? India is currently importing from China. We have couple of products. Let's say for example Dell, we have Apple, we have HP. These are the important laptops when it comes to the market. But what exactly happens? These markets are not only imported from United States of America directly, but they are also imported from China as well. If we are putting this restriction, especially with respect to China, these countries which are manufacturing in China will stop manufacturing in China because India is not importing them. So they'll start establishing their bases in India. So ultimately, what India will also bring in is more FDI into the country, and at the same time we will have more collaborations with the regional companies as well. So on one side, yes, it might be an issue, but we also have the positive light as well. So those countries operating in China right now will move to India, establish their bases in India because India happens to be a major market for them. Added to it, when these companies establish, they also bring in a lot of money. They will also bring the technology. They will also give boost to the GDP. They will also provide other employment opportunities as well. And once an industry is established, there are secondary options that are explored in that particular area. Apart from the employment, you will have hotels come up in that particular place. You will have infrastructure develop in that particular place. You will have roads and infrastructure that are also provided. So all this means there is a boost at the local level. This is the primary intention of the government of India. Yes, there could be some turmoil for a very brief period of time, and this has to be taken into consideration for the later consequences or later positive impact that we will be witnessing. So what is the way forward? Yes, Government of India has taken up this initiative. We will face certain issues, but going forward, this is basically done with an intention that ultimately what we have is Atmanirbharata or domestic industries growth. That is the major intention that has been taken by the Government of India with respect to this particular scheme. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, stop the fence sitting in cluster bomb use. This article here is speaking about the cluster ammunitions or the cluster bombs. What are these cluster munitions? These are the weapons that release multiple explosive submunitions called as bombs into the air. These submunitions explode as soon as they hit the ground, killing and maiming people in the area. How does it work? Let me give you a pictorial representation. What exactly happens? You have that particular aircraft which will launch these we have a particular aircraft which will launch these bombs. So you would have what is called as a single bomb. These single bombs will ultimately be broken off. The projectile launched will be broken off and you will have couple of ammunitions or the bombs. So the minute they are launched, what you will have is a breakaway, multiple munitions, and these munitions, the minute they fall on the ground, they immediately explode. What is the major drawback when it comes to these cluster bombs? They may explode immediately and they may not explode immediately as well. So this particular ammunition, the cluster bomb, will not explode immediately. They may stay in that particular area for a very long period of time, and ultimately when people don't even know that this particular bomb or the munition exists, it may explode. This may rip the parts of the body, killing people, children, women who have no idea what this particular ammunition is all about. So basically, when we speak about cluster ammunitions, these are nothing but bombs. When they fall on the ground, they explode, and ultimately it is the people who have become the major sufferers. Why are we discussing about it? That is because we recently have United States of America, which has said that it is planning to send these cluster bombs to Ukraine in a fight against Russia. When we look about cluster ammunitions, what we have to focus is on important treaty. The important treaty that we currently have is what is called as the Convention on the Cluster Munitions. When it comes to the Convention on the Cluster Munitions, you have some countries which are part of it. Then you also have some countries which are not part of it. So which are the countries which are part of it? Which are the countries which are not part of it? When it comes to countries like, let's say for example, Canada, Germany, France, United Kingdom, they are part of this convention. But then you have other countries like United States of America, Russia, China, Israel, India, they are not part of it. So as part of the assignment, you have to remember that there are these countries which are part of it, there are these countries which are not part of it. As part of the assignment, put on the comment section, is Pakistan a member to this particular treaty? Because Pakistan is an enemy country with India, is it part of this convention or not? Is what you have to put on the comment section. Since we are discussing about United States of America, Ukraine and Russia, all these countries are not part of this convention. When we go back and trace the history of this particular convention, it dates back to the year 2008. And do remember, when it comes to the cluster bombs, they were used during the Second World War. Since then, cluster bombs have been used in multiple occasions, let's say by United States of America in wars in Vietnam, Afghanistan and Iraq. And according to Cluster Munition Monitor, anywhere between 56,000 to 86,000 people have died in cluster munition affected countries since the year 1960s. What is this convention all about? What we have to do is a careful reading of this particular convention and also the Geneva Convention as well. When you look at Article 1 of the CCM, it basically bans the use, production, stockpiling, transfer of the cluster bombs. What does Article 1 say? Article 1 says that you're not supposed to manufacture these cluster bombs. Article 1 of the very same convention also goes on to say that transfer of cluster bombs should not be done. So what does this mean? United States of America is transferring these cluster bombs to Ukraine, and Ukraine is also going to bomb Russia, and this ultimately means there is going to be a massive impact that is created. Article 1 bans the transfer, but despite the ban on the transfer, what we see is United States of America transferring the same to Ukraine. Now, this leads to a logical conclusion that United States of America is not part of the convention, Russia is not part of the convention, Ukraine is not part of the convention. Since we are not part of this particular convention, all these articles and other things that are present in the convention are not imposed on us is the major thing. But what we have to do when we are reading international laws or any other laws, this has to be read juxtaposing with another one, which means to say there is another law that is in picture, and that happens to be what is called as the Geneva Convention. So the Geneva Convention basically speaks about some of the human rights that have to be followed when it comes to international war, so on and so forth. What does the Geneva Convention speak about? How does the international customary law work? Let's say, for example, we have what is called as the military in a government. We have what is called as the military, the armed forces. Whenever two countries are fighting with each other or they are at a situation of war, we will have two important compartments. One is the compartment of the military, the other is the compartment of the civilian population. So if there are two countries which are at war, only the military personnel will have to be hit, they would have to be taken, but it is not the civilian or the common people. So whenever there is an issue, what should happen? Only the military targets, the military people should be surrendering, they should be taken into the custody, and the civilian people should not be harmed. But in this particular case, since we are making use of the cluster ammunitions, what's happening when we are making use of the cluster ammunitions? This may explode, it may not explode, and it may explode after a couple of years as well. Who is being disturbed? Who is being harmed? It is the general public. So it is the civilians who are being abused. It is the civilians who are losing their lives. It is the civilians who are losing their legs as well as the hands, because they don't even know that there is a cluster bomb in that particular area which may explode after years in that area. So here what we have to focus is on the Geneva Convention, where it goes on to say Article 51 of 4 of Additional Protocol to 1949 Convention, where both Russia and Ukraine are parties to it. So given the nature of cluster bomb, their usage is classic example of indiscriminate use of force that fails to differentiate between combatants and civilians, or between civilian objects and military objectives. Since they are part of this Geneva Convention, they are part of the customary international law, they should not be using it, is what the author is trying to mold through his arguments. Yes, they may not be part of the CCM, but they are part of the customary international law, they are part of the Geneva Conventions, which basically means that you are violating some of the norms that have been proposed in the Geneva Convention. So basically you are violating the Geneva Convention, says the author. Further, in Article 51 of 5, Additional Protocol of Geneva Convention says, rule prohibits excessive use of force that causes incidental damage to the civilian population or civil objects when compared to the military benefits anticipated. Now the question is, why is United States of America transferring or distributing these to Ukraine? That is because, one, there is lack of alternatives from United States of America. United States of America, being a major member of NATO, what they wanted to do was to transport or export some of the tools, some of the equipments, some of the arms and ammunitions. But as of now, United States of America has committed over 2 million artillery shells to Ukraine. Since they are not able to provide these ammunitions, since they do not have any other option, they are currently sending these customary, that is cluster ammunitions. And at the same time, there is Ukrainian request. There has been request that has been made by Ukraine as well. What Ukraine currently feels is that Russia is hitting them hard in order to make sure they are able to protect. A request has been made by Ukraine, and that is why United States of America has been transferring these cluster ammunitions. And at the same time, there is political pressure within Ukraine as well. All this has led to requests being made by Ukraine, and this being transferred from United States of America to Ukraine. Taking this into picture, what we realize is that there is going to be more harm. It is the common people who will be disturbed, and ultimately United States of America and other countries will have to take a keen look into it. And as proposed by CCM, what we have to make sure is prevent the export of these tools, is what we have to understand with respect to this article. So eradication of these cluster ammunitions is the need of the hour, says the author. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about one of the groups or the treaties called as the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. Let us try and understand what is this organization all about. We know for the fact that when it comes to South America, there are countries in and around the Amazon forest. These Amazon forests are very important for couple of reasons, not only to South America but also for the entire world as well. Why? That is because these Amazon forests host a lot of biodiversity. There are different kinds of species as well. If the Amazon forest engages in deforestation or it conducts any mineral related activities, you are extracting minerals in this particular place, what you witness is deforestation in the Amazon region. This could have the likely repercussions not only to the Amazon countries in and around but to the world over. Why? Because on one side the biodiversity would be disturbed, and at the same time these Amazon forests are a source of fresh water. They are also a source where they are able to make sure that it is capturing carbon as well. It is capturing carbon and is giving out a lot of oxygen in the environment. So safeguarding the biodiversity and carbon capture is the most important essence of the Amazon. But if there is large scale deforestation, mineralization from these particular area, deforestation, this could ultimately harm the Amazon forest in South America. In order to make sure that this does not happen, we have countries which have come together basically to ensure that there is sustainability. Sustainability of what? Amazon forest. So which are the countries which are part of it? Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname and Venezuela have signed a joint declaration at the mouth of the Amazon River, laying out a nearly 10,000 word roadmap to promote sustainable development, deforestation and fight the organized crime that fuels it. So basically what we have to make sure is the sustainability of the Amazon forest. So that is why they have come up with this Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. This happens to be the first summit in 14 years for the 8-nation group that was set up in 1995 by South American countries that share the Amazon basin. So what are the objectives of it? One is supporting regional and thematic forums, implementing regional projects for sustainable development, establishing a system for environmental information and human capacity development, strengthening institutionally and building up its networking capacity at international level. These are some of the important objectives of Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. So this is basically being done to support the sustainability factors in the Amazon region. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, focusing on 13A without policing powers practical, says Ranil to the House. The article here is speaking about the 13th Amendment. What is this 13th Amendment? In a bid to resolve the ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka between Tamils and Sinhalese, the 13th Amendment was passed in 1987 as part of the Indo-Lanka Accord, which was signed by the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and Sri Lankan President J.R. Jayawardene. Sri Lanka became independent in 1948. Prior to that, they were under the rule of the British, just like India. So when you have people from Tamil Nadu, these people were taken to Sri Lanka. They were made to work in plantations as well. So large number of Tamilian population from India moved to Sri Lanka. They started living in Sri Lanka. They've started living in Sri Lanka and they also became the citizens of Sri Lanka over a period of time. But when it comes to Sri Lanka, the majoritarian community happens to be the Sinhalese. The minority population happens to be the Tamilian population. So this has become a major tussle between the Sinhalese as well as the Tamils. So the northern front of Sri Lanka, where you have the consolidation of Tamils, they were not given any of the rights. They were treated as the secondary citizens. Their recognition, their language was not at all recognized. It was only Sinhalese which was present in their constitution, and they were treated as second class citizens. In order to overcome all these issues, they took up arms against the existing government in order to prevent it, in order to make sure that the rights of the Sri Lankan Tamilian population are given to it. 13th Amendment came into picture. So the 13th Amendment provides a provincial council system, devolution of powers over lands, police, education, health, agriculture, housing and finances to 9 provinces of the country, including Sinhala majority area. Despite coming up with this 13th amendment, it is yet not implemented in many areas. That is primarily because it is opposed by the majority Sinhalese and the Sinhala nationalist parties. The Sinhalese have argued that it would undermine the unitary nature of the Sri Lankan nature, and at the same time there are many who also feels that if these amendments are given light to, where Tamil is recognized as an official language and English as a link language, in that case what we will see is India's imprint within the constitution of Sri Lanka, since there is this majoritarian concept that this should not be given. That is why many of these measures taken under 13th amendment is not into implementation. So basically, when it comes to 13th amendment, it is about giving rights to the Tamilian population in Sri Lanka. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about AUKUS. What is AUKUS? It is an acronym for Trilateral Security Pact between Australia, United Kingdom and United States, announced on 15th of September 2021 for the Indo-Pacific region. Under the pact, the US and UK will assist Australia in acquiring nuclear-powered submarines. The pact also includes cooperation on advanced cyber mechanisms, artificial intelligence, autonomy, quantum technology, undersea capabilities, hypersea and counter-hypersonic, electronic warfare, and this particular pact will also focus on military capability, separating it from 5 Eyes as part of the assignment. You have to put on the comment section what is this 5 Eyes, which are the countries which are part of this 5 Eyes, which happens to be an intelligence sharing alliance, and which are these countries. Please put it on the comment section. And this is based on 2 important pillars. One is pillar 1, the second happens to be pillar 2. Pillar 1 revolves around the acquisition and development of conventionally armed nuclear powered submarines for the Royal Australian Navy, and pillar 2 calls for collaboration on advanced capabilities that will involve technology and information sharing. These are the fundamentals, the foundation on the basis of which AUKUS is built. So one is the transfer of nuclear powered submarine, the other is information and technology sharing. Why has this been taken up? That is because in the Indo-Pacific region we have China, which is into a dominating position, and this has to be restricted in order to make sure that the dominating position in Indo-Pacific region does not affect Australia, New Zealand and any of the important countries associated with United States of America. This particular issue has been taken up. So AUKUS includes which are the countries? Australia, United Kingdom and United States of America. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So in case you're liking our videos, please do like, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also share these videos with your fellow aspirants as well, and subscribe to our